before the world maps were stained with foreign flags, before cannons thundered across unfamiliar shores, before empires claimed destiny as their divine right, there was a land untouched by European crowns, a land breathing with its own rhythm, its own gods, its own kings, and in the heart of Central Africa, beneath vast skies and restless winds, history was preparing something extraordinary. Across the Atlantic, wooden ships groaned under ambition, their sails heavy with greed. They did not come searching for friendship. They did not come seeking understanding. They came calculating profit, measuring land, valuing human life in chains. The ocean carried more than cargo. It carried the beginning of a storm. Empires expected silence, submission, bowed heads and lowered eyes. But in the face of muskets and missionaries, there would rise a woman who would not bend, not to fear, not to pressure, not even to death, and her defiance would echo across centuries. Her name was Nzinga, Nzinga, a name that would one day make governors uneasy, a name that would force soldiers to tighten their grip on their weapons, a name that would become legend. But on this night, she was simply a child, unaware that history had already chosen her. A queen, a diplomat, a warrior, a storm in human form. She would master the art of words and the language of war. She would negotiate with calm precision, then strike with ruthless clarity. Where others saw chaos, she saw strategy. Where others saw defeat, she saw timing. Nzinga was not just royalty. She was calculation wrapped in silk, lightning crowned in gold. The kingdom of Ndongo was powerful, rich in culture, rooted in tradition. Its people were farmers, hunters, warriors, spiritual leaders. Drums spoke across villages. Councils governed with wisdom. Royal bloodlines carried sacred responsibility. But power attracts envy, and wealth attracts invaders. A child was born beneath an omen of blood-red skies. The night Nzinga was born, the sky burned crimson. Some whispered it was a blessing. Others feared it was a warning. Midwives moved carefully inside the royal hut. Outside, the wind carried an uneasy chill. It was as if the earth itself knew. This child would not live an ordinary life. She was born into royalty, but royalty did not mean safety. Royal blood does not shield you from betrayal. It does not silence jealousy. It does not stop bullets. Even within palace walls, danger breathes quietly. Nzinga's cradle was carved from privilege, but surrounded by politics. And in politics, love is rare. Across the ocean, a hungry power was rising. In distant European courts, Africa was no longer mystery. It was opportunity. Maps were redrawn. Coastlines were measured. Human beings were counted, not as lives, but as labor. Portugal had tasted profit, and it wanted more. The slave trade had begun. Villages burned under sudden raids. Families were torn apart before sunrise. Chains replaced freedom. Ships replaced homes. The Atlantic became a graveyard without tombstones, and the cries of the captured carried on the wind. Africa was bleeding, not just from wounds of iron, but from wounds of betrayal. Neighbor turned against neighbor. Alliances shattered under pressure. The continent trembled, not because it was weak, but because it was under siege. And Nzinga was watching. From behind carved palace pillars, from quiet corners of council meetings, from the shadows where children were meant to remain unseen. Nzinga watched. She listened. She learned. And unlike others, she did not panic. She studied. She was not raised like other girls. While laughter echoed in courtyards, Nzinga sat among elders. While others stitched cloth, she stitched strategy. She asked questions no one expected from a daughter. She memorized names, studied rival tribes, listened to political tension like music. The fire. Her father saw it. While others learned embroidery, Nzinga learned statecraft. She studied diplomacy before she understood romance. She learned negotiation before she learned comfort. Her classroom was the royal court. Her textbooks were disputes and treaties, and every conversation was preparation. because destiny was not coming softly. It was coming armed. She learned their language. To defeat an enemy, you must first understand them. Nzinga learned Portuguese, their tone, their customs, their pride. She would one day sit across from them, and they would assume superiority. They would not know that the girl they underestimated had already memorized their playbook. The empire believed Africa would bow. It believed kings would fracture. It believed resistance would crumble. What it did not see coming was a girl born under a red sky, a girl who would grow into a storm, and when that storm arrived, it would shake the foundations of an empire. Nzinga was not raised like other girls. While others played beneath open skies, she sat in silence, watching, listening. Even as a child, she understood something most adults did not. Power is never accidental. Her father saw something different in her. Her father saw it first, in council meetings filled with elders and warriors, while others shifted impatiently. Nzinga remained still. Her gaze did not wander. Her mind did not drift. She studied men twice her age, as if weighing them, and the king began to realize his daughter was not ordinary. While others learned tradition, she studied power. While girls her age perfected ceremony and custom, Nzinga learned influence. She traced the invisible lines between chiefs, measured loyalties, noted rivalries, because tradition sustains a kingdom, but power protects it. She listened when she was not meant to speak. There were places she was not invited, conversations she was not meant to hear. But Nzinga understood something vital. Knowledge hides in the shadows, so she stood quietly behind carved pillars, absorbing every heated debate, every secret grievance, every fear of Portugal. She memorized the names of rivals. She memorized names the way warriors memorized battle chants. Chiefs who smiled too widely, tribes that shifted allegiance too quickly. She stored them all in her mind, like weapons waiting to be drawn. Because memory is strategy, she studied the Portuguese. But her sharpest attention was fixed on the coastline, the Portuguese ships, the foreign armor, the strange weapons that thundered smoke and death. They claimed they came to trade, but Nzinga saw something colder in their eyes. Calculation. She learned their language. She learned their words carefully. Each phrase, each greeting, each diplomatic courtesy, not out of admiration, but preparation. Because to defeat an enemy, you must first understand how they think, and language reveals everything. But the kingdom was changing. Ndongo no longer felt secure. Drums carried unease instead of celebration. Warriors stood watch longer at night. Whispers replaced laughter. The air itself felt different, as if the land knew something was coming. Her brother, Mbandi, would inherit the throne. When their father died, the crown passed to Mbandi, and with it, the burden of survival. He wore the regalia of a king, but the weight of rule pressed heavily on his spirit, and fear entered the palace. Fear does not knock. It seeps in quietly, through corridors, through glances, through doubt. Soon, the palace walls held more suspicion than trust. Mbandi feared her intelligence. Mbandi saw how elders respected Nzinga's mind, how warriors paused when she spoke, how even silence bent toward her presence, and insecurity whispered in his ear. She is a threat. Power makes men ruthless. Power can fortify a man, or consume him. Under pressure, Mbandi hardened. Every decision became sharper, more desperate, more dangerous. Even blood ties were not safe. In times of paranoia, even family becomes suspect. Loyalty is questioned, affection fades, and history would remember that no bond, not even blood, was sacred enough to survive fear. Nzinga did not break. But Nzinga did not crumble. She did not cry before the court. She did not beg for protection. She adapted. Pain became fuel. Loss became clarity. She waited. While others reacted, she observed. While others panicked, She calculated, because patience, when sharpened by intelligence, becomes deadly, because she understood something her brother did not. Bandi saw threats inside the palace. Nzinga saw the greater danger outside it. Portugal was not improvising. It was planning, and she could see the pattern forming. The Portuguese were not traitors. Traitors negotiate. Traitors compromise. But these men built forts, stockpiled weapons, trained soldiers. This was not commerce. They were conquerors. Conquerors do not seek partnership. They seek control, land, labor, dominance, and once they claim territory, they do not return it. And the storm was coming. Nzinga felt it before others did, like thunder rumbling beyond the horizon, a pressure in the air, a tension in the silence. Something immense was approaching Ndongo, and Nzinga was ready. She was no longer just a princess. She was preparation personified. Every lesson, every betrayal, every whispered council meeting had sharpened her. The empire believed Africa would bow, but in the heart of Ndongo, a strategist had already risen. The year was 1622. Portugal, confident in its might, demanded a meeting that would decide the fate of kingdoms. The air across the Atlantic buzzed with the weight of ambition, and Africa was about to respond. King Bandi sent Nzinga as his ambassador. King Bandi chose his sister, not because she was safe, but because she was brilliant. Where others would stumble, she would navigate. Where others would bow, she would stand. Nzinga stepped forward, a princess on a mission that could change history. A grand Portuguese hall awaited. Inside Luanda, a hall of polished wood and tall windows awaited. Sunlight streamed across the floor, gleaming like golden knives. Portuguese officials sat in careful order, their eyes calculating, their pride filling the room. The stage was set, and the game about to begin. European officials seated on high chairs. They sat on high chairs, symbols of power, feathers and embroidery, swords at their sides, and confidence that Africa would obey. They assumed superiority. Little did they know, their arrogance was about to meet its match. Nzinga enters. Then she entered, calm, dignified, her royal cloak flowing like liquid fire behind her. Every eye turned, every whisper stopped. She carried neither fear nor doubt, only the certainty of her purpose. They offer her no chair. They did not rise. They did not offer her a seat. It was deliberate, a silent assertion of power. But Nzinga felt no insult, only opportunity. It was deliberate, a symbol of what they believed, that a woman, no matter her blood or intelligence, should kneel. The room tightened. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. History paused, waiting. You are beneath us. The message was clear. You are beneath us. Their gaze, sharp and unwavering, sought to intimidate. But Nzinga smiled, not mockingly, not angrily, calmly, with the kind of patience that hides a storm. The room holds its breath. A pause fell over the hall. Officials frozen mid-gesture, servants unsure where to move. Even the sunlight seemed to hesitate, casting long, dramatic shadows across polished wood. It was a moment pregnant with suspense. And Nzinga smiles. A subtle, confident smile, unwavering. She had already won the first battle. Without raising a voice, without drawing a weapon, she communicated more in that smile than the Portuguese had in all their treaties. She signals one of her attendants. With a quiet gesture, she summoned her attendant. No words were spoken. No one moved too soon. Every eye followed her subtle command. Because in that room, the unspoken carried power. The woman kneels on all fours. The attendant dropped to the floor. On all fours, she became a human throne, a living pedestal for the woman who would not kneel. The audacity rippled through the hall. Shock mixed with disbelief. This had never been seen before. Nzinga calmly sits on her back, eye level with the governor. Nzinga mounted the human throne with poise. Eye level with the governor, unshaken. The tables of power were turned. The hall, filled with arrogance, now trembled at her audacity. This was strategy. This was defiance. This was genius. If they would not offer her a seat, she would create her own throne. They had denied her dignity, so she created her own. On human shoulders, with unflinching calm, every inch of that gesture screamed, "I am not less than you. I am not afraid." In that moment, the empire understood something terrifying. For the first time, the Portuguese saw it. This was no ordinary princess. This was a ruler, a strategist, a force of nature who would bend the rules of men and the rules of empires. This was no ordinary woman. Her gaze was steady, her posture regal, her presence commanding. Every official in that hall understood it in that moment. She would not submit. She would not yield. And the empire had underestimated her, dangerously so.